Hi everyone and welcome to the Publishing Performance Show. Today I'm delighted to be joined by Chris Wallace, who is a poker player, an author and the co-founder of WrittenWell.com. So thanks for joining the show, Chris.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so why don't you give me a bit of your background into how you got started with writing?
I've always been interested in writing from a young age, but I wasn't really serious about it. I didn't grow up in a world where I thought you could write for a living. That just wasn't a thing that I understood as a reality, or I probably would have done it a long time ago. I was a guitar builder, developed an allergy to the exotic hardwoods I was working with, and immediately had to find a new job. My job was trying to kill me. And I had counted cards in blackjack as part of my living for many years. And I had a friend who was a professional poker player, semi-professional poker player. He was a winning player, but he wasn't playing for a living. And he made fun of me for getting kicked out of another casino for counting cards in blackjack when the casino doesn't care how good you are at poker. And I was driving a taxi and trying to figure out what to do for a living now that my career in building guitars was over. And I asked him, is it possible to do that for a living? And this was, 25 years ago when people really didn't know you could do that for a living. And he said, yeah, I don't see why not. And he loaned me 3 poker books, and I was off and running as a professional poker player. And I was also in the midst of a rough divorce, and I started writing to kind of just journal that and maybe do something with it. And Adam, who I run the site with, Adam Stemple, was also a big help in writing. And I said, do you want to look at some of my writing? He said, yeah, bring some of it in. So he redlined in pen, it was back in those days, about 30 pages of what I'd written to start a book, and said, look, you need a lot of work, but you have a lot of talent here. This is something you should do. And so as poker was paying my bills, which happened pretty quickly, about within 6 months of starting to study poker, within 6 months of the time I'd played my first hand of Texas Hold'em, I was making too much money to go to work at the cab company.
Nice.
And then the poker boom blew up a year or two later. All of a sudden, Moneymaker and the World Poker Tour and a bunch of other things combined to just absolutely blow poker up. And I was writing a blog for a company called Pocket Fives, and it was very popular, and I was playing so much smaller than everyone else who was blogging for them, but I was blogging every day and I could write. So these other guys who were playing really big just couldn't write or weren't blogging very often. And so I was getting a ton of readers. And then I was approached by a poker magazine. Hey, we like your blog. Can you write articles for us? And I was ecstatic to do that. I'd never been paid to write anything in my life.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I was getting paid absurd amounts of money to write things. Yeah. Because when the poker boom happened, there weren't a lot of poker players who could write, and there was all this money. The money in the early days of the online poker boom was incredible. But it was a time when PokerStars was making millions of dollars a day, and Full Tilt was making millions of dollars a day. And they were buying the advertising in these poker magazines. So the magazines were making so much money they just needed to fill them with content. So I was getting $1,500 for a 1,000-word article.
Oh, nice.
And, I didn't tell my author friends how much money I was getting paid because I knew they'd be mad, because that's just unheard of money.
Yeah.
And I was writing as many of them as people wanted. I mean, at that rate, yeah, do you want 50 articles a month? I'll do it. I don't care. However many articles you want. And I started to watch what my editors had published as opposed to what I'd sent them. And then try to make the next thing I sent them more like what they'd published, figure out what they were changing, how they were doing things. Because I don't know if it's true in all of the magazine world, but in poker magazines, they really would take what I sent them, do whatever they wanted with it, and publish it. They didn't send me corrections and ask me if I liked them. They didn't, none of that. They were paying me too much money to bother with that. So they just did that. And so I just watched when the magazine came out and compared it to what I had sent in, and try to get better at that. And within a few years, I was sending them stuff that they were just printing.
Yep.
And I was writing a 1,000-word article in 45 minutes. I write fast. But it took work to get to that point. But within a few years, I was at that point. And then I wrote a few poker books. I sent my business partner in WrittenWell, Adam, is a consummate writer. He's a real student of the craft and really knows the game. And his whole family are writers. His mom's published 400 books. And so I ended up with 80,000 words of the strategy that I had taught myself for No Limit Hold'em. I was making a living playing No Limit Hold'em online, playing poker and doing really well. And with spreadsheets and equity calculators and all these poker related tools, I'd kind of taught myself a strategy and figured it out. And I wrote 80,000 words, but it wasn't really a book. I didn't know how to order it, how to deal with the various problems that were there. So I sent it to Adam and said, hey, what do you think I should do with this thing? I don't know how to organize this. And he said, ooh, let me make this a book. It's good. So he turned it into a book. We bounced it back and forth a couple times for a few edits. And we self-published it back in the days before print-on-demand printing. And back in those days, maybe 1% of self-published books made a profit. It was very rare. It was generally a vanity thing. But we already had a built-in audience. I had a lot of people reading my stuff and watching training videos I'd made, things like that. So we had 2,000 books printed up and delivered. We took delivery of pallets of books. Unheard of these days. You couldn't pay me enough to take delivery of a pallet of books right now. And sold a ton of them and made a bunch of money. I think we made $30,000 or $40,000 from that book in the first printing, and kind of learned a lot from doing it. Realized I could write a book and that this was a thing. And so as the money fell off in the online poker world, those writing gigs that I had really started to dry up. They started to be, oh, we'll pay you 500, then we'll pay you 300, then we'll pay you 200, and then like, oh, we don't really pay people anymore. And multiple of those magazines said, by the way, we're broken. We're not paying people anymore, and we're not paying you for the last 2 months. Things right. Like that happened.
Yeah.
So I quit doing that, and I started to focus on writing poker books. So I wrote 2 more poker books. Short Stack Ninja was a book I wrote on my own, and then Getting Started with Horse I wrote with a couple of very famous poker players, the Mizrachi brothers, and neither one of them sold that well at first. And it's really, poker books, not only have poker books dropped off and don't sell as well as they used to, but you can't advertise them. And this is kind of a gray area in Amazon, because I do see sponsored results with a bunch of poker books in them, but I believe they're kind of gray hat marketing their way into doing this now.
I think the restriction is on gambling, possibly.
Yes, and they call it gambling, and so you can't. And the same thing with Facebook.
Yeah, I mean, there was a book, I did a coaching call with a guy who was writing a book about how to win the lottery, and even lost that wasn't able to be advertised either, because it was lottery is gambling.
Sure. So whether there's still a prohibition or a way around it now or whatever, at the time, a few years ago, it was just impossible to advertise these books anywhere that had significant reach. I couldn't advertise them on Facebook or Amazon. And so rather than do that or write something different, what I focused on was the Amazon search algorithm.
Yep.
I used a lot of my game theory knowledge to reverse engineer the Amazon search algorithm and learn how Amazon worked and what they wanted and how this worked. And so I was able to then get a lot more sales than poker writers who were a lot more famous than I was.
Yep.
I started to do consultations. I worked with a number of very famous poker players, helping them get more sales because I was out selling them.
Yeah.
And that then turned into helping some other people who weren't poker players do the same thing. And then it turned into a big consulting where I just had, I was having Zoom calls all day and didn't have time to do anything else. And so we decided to launch a website and teach people the same way we had done with the poker training website 25 years ago. We decided to do the same thing with this self-publishing, between Adam's knowledge of the craft and both of us having sold a bunch of books self-published and my consulting with authors to help them get more sales and all the things that we learned. We decided we had the knowledge to do this. And then we brought in 2 other people who had some knowledge we didn't have. Blaze Ward, who's published 250 books and run an independent author magazine kind of thing for years, and then Lyda Morehouse, who coaches and teaches and writes paranormal romance stuff, which is just a subject we didn't have any part of. And so between the 4 of us, we had things pretty well covered, and we started to make content and fill up the site. And now we're working with a bunch of industry people, including you, to help them out with whatever content they need and to help their customers get more book sales, because people can continue to buy publishing performance if they're putting out enough good selling books to pay for it, right? So that's kind of how we're working with everybody in the industry, is we can help your authors get more sales, and if they have more sales, they can afford whatever your product is, or we'll keep using it or whatever.
Yeah, nice. So that's where WrittenWell came in. So that's where you founded WrittenWell. So why don't you give us a bit of an overview of how WrittenWell works?
Yeah, can I screen share in this software?
Yeah, you can, but we just need to remember that it's an audio podcast as well. So we could, as long as we're talking about what we're doing, that's no problem.
Ah, gotcha.
But it's no problem. I think I need to give you permission.
Looks like
I think you can just screen share.
yeah, it looks like just a screen, and then I can choose, and so there we go. This is pretty easy.
There you go.
Yeah.
So
So
we just need to make sure we're talking about what we're seeing.
yeah, absolutely. What we started with WrittenWell, the goal was to be sort of an overarching teach people all about self-publishing and give them whatever knowledge they don't have, because there's so many different things you need to learn.
Yeah.
You know, you need to learn about writing to market. You'll need to learn how to actually write and how to finish a book, and then how to format a book and how to design a cover that's correct for your market and looks good, and write a blurb. And I could go on all day about all the different skills you need to learn to be a successful self-published author on your own. And if you have 80% of them, you're screwed. You have to have them all, or you have to pay somebody to do them, and you have to understand that you don't know them and you need them, and then you can pay somebody to do them. So what we wanted was to give people an overview of all the things they needed, and then resources to get all those skill sets or hire people to do those things for them, so that we could make sure they had everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what we did. We put together courses on a bunch of different things, and we have more courses going up this week. So we're looking at courses on Amazon ads, on becoming an independent author, on writing to market, 30 days to better writing, Amazon ads 1. There's a whole list of courses. And then we have the amount of information on the site is absurd. It's really enormous. We had to switch to a different hosting company just so that this thing would move fast enough and get dedicated hosting and the whole thing. So if we go to the genre guides, which are a big part of the site, click on fantasy guide, and you can see the detail that's involved in all these genre guides. And these are all geared towards sales, right? I've told my poker students for 25 years, I can teach you how to make more money playing poker. I can't teach you how to have more fun. So if you're just a recreational player who just wants to have fun and get better, I can make you better. But really, I'm going to be focused on making money. That's what I've focused on. I've got bills to pay, right? I don't have money. I don't have millions of dollars in the bank where I can just screw around. So I've treated writing in much the same way. This is about making money writing, making a living writing. And so our genre guides cover every major genre on Amazon. And when we're looking at the fantasy genre guide here, they start off with what is this? You know, if you don't know a lot about any of these genres, you can go and start off by reading what does it look like. Then there's always a should I write in this genre button. One of the big keys is do you love this genre already, right? If you can't write something just because it's successful, or I'd be a romance writer, and I just can't. And so you can go read a whole article on should I write in this genre? Do you need these qualities? You need to, want to write these things. And then the must-haves for any book. The must-haves, like in thriller, include a ticking clock and a hyper vigilant and hyper competent hero, and the things that you have to have in every. So in fantasy, it's a sense of wonder and an internal consistency in your stories.
So basically, if you are thinking about writing a novel, or especially something that is fiction in one of these areas, these guides basically give you an overview of all of the things you need to be including. So it's by joining, you're getting guides for essentially like lots of different books that you'd be buying on Amazon as guides to start your own book.
Yes, and these guides are very in depth, and there's subgenre guides. Like in fantasy, there are like 20 subgenres where there's a guide for each of those. So there's the must-haves, then there's a list of tropes and clichés, right? Tropes you want to include, clichés you don't. We've also got lots of information about how to determine more tropes and clichés. We talk a lot about how to do your own research, but we've done a bunch of it here as the basics.
So tropes are basically the things that everyone expects to see in a book, whereas the cliches are ones they expect to see, but it's kind of been done too much.
What they're tired of, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And we talk a lot in our research videos, how to learn about your market. One of the best ways to find the cliches is to find good books that are selling really well. Usually you want to find self-published books if you can, because they're more what you're comparing to. And then look at the bad reviews. and find out if there's something that people are tired of in a genre. You're going to see it reoccurring in these bad reviews, and you're going to know this is a cliche. And that's kind of how we come up with a lot of the cliches.
Yep.
And then there's this list of all these subgenres, which all have their own guide. There's a business report, which is updated every month. Adam somehow has figured out how to go through and do a full market report. He uses Publisher Rocket, which this screenshot is from, but he also uses Kindle Trends and a bunch of his own things that he's written in spreadsheets and all these resources. And so every month he does a review for every genre and every subgenre about how this looks, what kind of things people are buying in this genre. Fantasy as a whole has trended down a little bit, and that's something we're looking at on screen right now.
Yeah.
But it doesn't affect you necessarily, because a number of fantasy subgenres that you might be writing in have gone up, and fantasy's still big business. We're not panicking over this. Then there's always a link to the bestsellers, a guide on writing to market in this particular genre. There's a video here that is talking about how to write to market in fantasy and do your research in various fantasy subgenres.
So who's your target audience with WrittenWell? Is it people that are starting out to write their books, or is it, because you mentioned before you're also looking at businesses who might be using WrittenWell as well?
Yeah, well, we didn't think businesses were going. It didn't occur to us that businesses were going to be part of this thing.
Yeah,
our target market was people who want to be self-published authors and current self-published authors that want to get more sales.
Yeah,
those are the people that I was already doing consulting with. So I thought these are the people that are our market. And then we went to the Author Nation conference where we met you. Yeah. And every major industry player, when we talked to them, said, we love what you're doing and we want to work with you.
Yeah.
And that may not turn into any money ever. Who knows? It's a totally different market than we thought we were going to be dealing with. We've already been on all these big, we've either been on or are going to be on all these big podcasts. Adam was on the Book Funnel podcast last week. I was on the Indie Author Magazine podcast the week before that. We've done all of these things that we just launched at Author Nation, and to have all these industry people interested really validated our idea that okay, this is a thing that the industry needs. There are lots of people who can teach, who are willing to do all these different things for you, but there's nobody who's covering everything and who's willing to send you to other places to get the right thing for whatever you are. We have multiple courses on Amazon ads. We're also going to tell people about publishing performance, because whatever's right for our subscribers is what we want them to have.
Yeah, awesome.
Like, we have lots of more advanced stuff, but there are some advanced things where we just say, go talk to Mal Cooper. Here's her website. Here's her email address. She's really good at that thing. We don't consider ourselves to have any competition at all. We will send people everywhere. We just want our people to do well and make sure that we can help them get sales.
Yeah. I mean, how you, when you're working with authors and businesses, what does that work look like? Is it, because obviously you've got the blog, or not the blog, but the guide, where people can read through the content and get understanding of things like the tropes. But what does working with you look like?
Sorry, what does what look like?
Working with you, or is it just the going through the content?
Well, I still do some private consulting, and we do whatever people want. I mean, we're for hire, but it's not something we stress on the site. The site is really for giving you all the resources to find these things as cheaply and efficiently as possible. And the cheapest and most efficient way to get something like a cover design is not to pay us to do it.
Yeah,
right.
Of course.
The way to get the best thing possible is to pay us to do the market research and design the cover for you that looks like it's appropriate for your, all that. But it's expensive, and most self-published authors don't want that. And so we want to give you all of the information to be a successful self-published author in one place. Yep. So there's what it looks like to me for people who just sign up for the site is, oh, look at all these genre things. Look at all the research. I can figure out exactly what I should be writing and how to write to market. I can take this write to market course, and I can learn about all the things they're talking about, so I can start writing things that are going to sell. And then when I get, and then, I want to make these things good. Well, there's all these courses from Blaze and from Adam and about how to write well. and how to get books that get good reviews and get sales because they're written well.
Yeah.
And I can take those courses while I'm, I can take the course on editing yourself once my first draft is done. There's support all along the way.
Yeah.
And then, okay, now it's time to run my ads, and it's time to, write my description, and, pick my keywords. And here's where I read Chris's content about how Amazon really works and how these keywords really work. And, the keywords course that I'm going to put up in the next day or two is a different look at keywords than anybody's ever taken, because I'm looking at it from a whole different perspective. Like, I broke down how this really works and what's successful and what isn't. And everybody else just goes, well, try to pick things that, are relevant to your book, and we'll get lots of search results. And, here's how to find a bunch of keywords. That's great, but that's not going to make you a lot of money. What makes you money is figuring out the keywords that no one else is using, and the keywords that are actually valuable, because Amazon already knows so much about your book that, people will write like a historical romance and then put historical romance in their keywords.
Mm-hmm.
If you're already in that category, that does you zero good on Amazon. Amazon already knows that about your book, and they'll just ignore it in your keywords. But if you write, instead, you go with Victorian LGBTQ romance, because that's what your book is, you get those long tail search results that other people might not be getting.
Yeah.
And then you look at, like, one of the examples I put in the book was, what if you ranked high for horror book? Right? That's like a very simple keyword that people will pick. First of all, Amazon already knows that you wrote a horror book, so you're not going to rank high for it. But what if you did a bunch of work to rank high for that keyword? Well, then you would rank high for a keyword where almost no one gets to the search results, because there are 40 sponsored results before the search results. So no one even gets to your book anyway. If you rank number one, they still see 40 things before that look like results. They see Goodreads results, they see sponsored results, they see all these different things before they see your book, and it's a waste of time. Whereas instead, if you wrote, if it was New England werewolf books,
mm-hmm.
at least, maybe it's only 50 people a year that search for that subject, but at least you get those 50 people, and you can get all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
If you so much more valuable. And looking at how Amazon ranks things and which things are important, and that, like, I don't think anybody else is putting that kind of work into how how keywords work. And that's just, my brain just likes to break things and figure out how they work. And so that's what I did. And that's what we've done with everything on the site. Literally, like, all the courses on the right to market stuff, and then on writing, and on the craft, and on advertising. And I've gone as far as, like, I wrote an article on keyboards, and like, everything around the office that you can use that's valuable to you. I'm a mechanical keyboard nerd, so I've learned all about all the different ones. But Adam uses the crappiest, thumpiest keyboard he can find, and that's all the different options and how to test them out and what might be good for you. And so, yeah, and then Blaze Ward has written 250 books, and when we asked him to create some content for the site, he dumped an absurd amount of content on us in a big hurry. We were not prepared for how much work Blaze puts in every day. This guy, I mean, incredible, the amount of work that he does just every day, all day. He's just one of those super high performance humans.
That was interesting what you said about the keywords before, because I say this to clients a lot when I speak to them. They say, "Oh, I want to rank for." Oh yeah, as you mentioned, it's like mostly non-fiction people I speak to, but I'll speak to someone. They'll say, "I want to be number one for public speaking," and I'm like, "Well, you could do, but you're competing with Tim Ferriss and people like that." Or I speak to people, they're like, "I want to be number one for productivity," and I'm like, "Well, you can, but you're going to be competing with Atomic Habits. So is that really what you want to be doing, or do you want to try and find a different keyword to try and rank for, which is much more specific to the exact book you're trying to target?" Mm-hmm. It's if you're ranking number one for horror, you're probably competing with Dracula. Who's going to win that battle? It's not you. Yeah.
I tell people the amount of money that I suspect that I think it would cost them to rank for that keyword.
Yeah.
I think I can help you rank for the keyword productivity. I think I can help you rank in the top 5 for that keyword. But
hundreds of dollars a day,
$25,000.
Yeah.
Right now to get started to do that. It's going to be so much work and so much money, and I promise you're not going to make that money back.
Yeah.
Like
I think
I'll just tell people openly, we can do that, but it costs so much money, and you're going to lose this much money doing it. It's not worth, it's so not worth it. And finding the right long tail keywords. The course has a whole thing about how to narrow down your keywords to the things that actually matter, that Amazon doesn't already know about your book, and that will bring in conversions, because ultimately all Amazon cares about is conversion rate.
Yeah, definitely.
So
Now,
if a ranking for a keyword brings in people that won't buy your book, it's bad for you. It's horrible for you,
yeah,
because if Amazon sees you're not converting, they downgrade your search for everything.
yeah,
If you're not converting, so an example I use is, if your description includes the words right and angle and geometry, but they're not related to geometry, they're about your sci-fi book and they happen to be in there, then you may want to put in your keywords geometry in quotes and angle in quotes, but not put right angle geometry or any of those things without quotes, because quotes exclude all the other words.
yeah,
And there may be reasons to exclude keywords. Virus is another good one, where I helped a guy with a cyberpunk book, and there was biological engineering and there were computer viruses. And I said, let's put biological engineering in quotes and computer virus in quotes, because we don't want to ever rank for biological virus or biologically engineered virus, because those people will definitely not buy this book. They're searching
yeah.
for something else. And
Conspiracy
that
theorists.
hurts
Yeah,
us in our conversion rate, and then Amazon downgrades us.
yeah,
That kind of in-depth understanding of how the search algorithm works, and how to make money just with the simple keyword boxes, which are much less important than cover, description, title.
yeah.
But going into that kind of depth is the algorithm nerd that
Yeah.
I am.
I did a really in-depth conversation with Dave Chesson from Kindlepreneur about that exact topic, about what to do with those back end 7 keywords, and he said exact same thing. So if you want to see a
Dave
bit of more of
Sharp,
an
that's for
in-depth
sure.
episode, yeah, he knows what he's doing. He's the man on that. But yeah, on your course, it sounds like it really goes into a lot of detail on all of these different aspects. So when you are a member, you can literally just see all the different parts.
Yeah.
Now with your genre guides, obviously you've seen a lot of trends and changes in the industry over time. Are you seeing any trends or changes to the way that content is being consumed at the moment?
Adam would be the real expert on that. He checks that every month, but we're definitely seeing more and more people listen to audiobooks.
Yep.
There will be a time 2 to 5 years from now, maybe, probably closer to 5, where you can just upload your book and an AI will do the narration and it will sound good.
Yeah. I think it's less than that.
Currently you can do that, but it's not great. It's just okay.
Yeah.
So you can, Google Play Books does that automatically for you. Audible's now testing it. You can just go to 11 Labs or places like that and have the narration done and pay for it. You can probably have a book narrated for $100 from an AI. But in 5 years, it's going to really sound good. Whereas right now, there's a company called Spoken where they
I spoke to them earlier this week. That episode's coming out soon.
yeah, they're very interesting. And one of the things you can do there is fix the problem I have with AI narration. The problem most people have with it is that it puts the emphasis in the wrong places in sentences and doesn't understand that stuff. So the voice may sound natural, and then it sounds like someone who hasn't really spoken English before. And you can in Spoken, you can go through and listen to your book and you go, oh, this line is not spoken correctly. Click the record button, speak it correctly with the right emphasis, and then it will take the AI voice and make that emphasis on that line, and now it sounds right. You have to go through your whole book line by line, but you can actually get it to sound right, and it doesn't cost you, a bunch of money. Whereas, having a narrator do your book is going to cost you at least $1,000.
Yeah.
And you may have to give them a piece of the book if you go through Audible. It's an expensive process because it takes the narrator a lot of time.
Yeah.
So that, that's going to take over audiobooks, and audiobooks are going to be even more common. And I think they're going to continue to take over. I meet people all the time who are making more money with audiobooks than they did in the past. And also I meet people out in public who listen to books and don't read them.
Yep.
These days, it's becoming the most common thing.
Well, the guy that started Spoken, he doesn't read; he just listens to books. But that's
Yeah.
why he did it.
The
Yeah.
majority of the books that I consume these days are listened as well.
Wow. Yeah, that's really interesting. Now, what about AI in writing? Are you seeing any trends or changes in that, and how that's affecting things like the way you do ads? I'm not talking about the way that sort of publishing performance works. I'm talking about more about the way that it's written.
It's interesting. What AI does well is exactly publishing performance's thing, right? That's what it does well. What it doesn't do well are the human element stuff. And while a lot of writers are very concerned about AI writing books these days, and in fact, members of the general public think AI writes good books now. Many of them think that, and it's really, really far off. I did a thing like a year ago where I used pseudo write, and I didn't I didn't train it. I'm sure I could have done better, and I'm sure it's better now. But what I did was tell it I wanted to write this story about a fool who goes off to fight the dragon to defend his village, and then we traded off paragraphs, kind of like pseudo write will do. It'll write a few paragraphs and then have you write a little something to direct where things are going, and so I used that feature, and then pointed out all of its mistakes and comically corrected them. And so, 4,000 words into the story, the fool finds the dragon. And then I write, but this wasn't the actual dragon. In fact, this dragon flew away and never came back. And the character didn't run into the dragon until 65,000 words because it would be ridiculous to have him fight the dragon this early. And then I let pseudo write some more. And then, the third time that the character ran into wolves, that right after that, I said, and then the wolves fled, and the character didn't run into any more wolves because that was getting ridiculous. And I kept correcting it in that way, and it was a big hit on Facebook. People thought it was really funny. And seeing what AI does when you tell it to write fiction, and especially seeing okay, the first time you get this thing where you think, oh, if it can generate a bunch of these, I could fix these. And then you generate the second one and it's exactly like the first one. You go, oh crap, it's not actually going to do anything for me here. This is,
Yeah.
when I prompt it with write me a fantasy story about these things, it writes me basically the same story every time with the same mistakes, and it's going to be a problem. I know there are some companies that write romance that will have a romance book written by AI with certain prompts and then give it to an editor and then another editor to get it kind of turned into a trashy romance. And even when they're done, it isn't that good. It's just that they can crank out a lot of them. And they can, they don't have to have any good writers on staff. They could just have a badly written AI thing and then editors who fix it. And these editors will run it through Pro Writing Aid and AutoCrit and fix things themselves and then kind of make it like a passable trashy romance, but they can churn out 3 of them a month.
Yeah.
And
I think
that turns into money if you get somebody who reads your old catalog.
Those romance ones are a bit paint by numbers sometimes, I think, and a lot of people just love reading them. I didn't even realize this until I went to Author-Nation, to be honest, but people just love romance books, and because I don't read them myself, I think people just read 5 a week and just bash through them and just get loads and loads.
Voracious readers.
Yeah,
and if a romance reader likes your first book, they will just buy your whole catalog and read all the way through it.
Yep. I only found out this was true because after Author-Nation I spoke to my mum, and that's how she reads. So I'm quite picky. I read 1 or 2 things, and then if I don't like it, I'll stop reading and read something else.
The money in romance can be incredible for people who write well and quickly.
Yeah,
really a lot of money.
Yeah,
and especially seeing the trends when Adam puts them up every month. Dark romance has been gone crazy.
Yeah,
that subgenre is just shooting up. All the graphs are sky high right now for dark fantasy and dark romance. If horrible things happen to your character and then they fall in love with the person who did it to them, your books are selling really well right now.
So what I'm getting from you about WrittenWell is basically it's just a place where you can get the expertise of the leading experts in the industry and get their up-to-date views on exactly how you should be writing something with the trends in the market. And it's just the best place just to see essentially what's going on in the industry at the moment and how you can take advantage of that.
Yeah. And we also do tons of articles on the craft of writing and how to write well.
Yeah.
We do, the upcoming events, which I've pulled up on the screen here right now. There's in a couple of hours, I'm running the Wednesday critique group where you have your own writers group and you submit up to 1,000 words on the forums and we all go read them and then we'll go read each other's stuff and then we do a critique on Zoom. And then Adam runs a Monday writing sprint where you sign up for that and do sprints. I went to that last week and wrote 1,500 words in the
Nice.
70 minutes or whatever. We did the multiple sprints. And
how many people do you see usually join these calls?
Right now, it's just maybe 3, 4, 5 because we just really kind of launched the site and are starting to get people on.
Yeah, nice. So you can get a bit of extra help.
It's a lot more valuable now than it will be in a year. I'll tell you that because if we have 1,000 members on the site, I have no idea what I'm going to do with this critique group or how to run, how to run 20 critique groups. I can't do them all myself. So, it'll be a different thing. Right now, you're getting Adam and I specifically. You're getting Blaze Ward to critique your sci-fi book. You're getting, right now it's incredibly valuable, but that'll change as time goes on, and that, that all becomes different.
Yeah, nice.
And the forums are a big part of the site as well. We want people to be helping each other.
So what's the plan for the future over the next year of WrittenWell?
Plan number 1 is for this to replace our jobs so that we can work full time on this thing and just make it better all the time, spend all of our time on it. That's really what we want to do. We want to keep flushing out the site until we just are covering everything. We'd like to bring a few more people in to handle different genres, to run things in forums, to run writers critique groups, to run, all these things that are like personal interactions that we won't have time to do as membership increases. And then we'd just like to see something build on the forums where people are helping each other, where, where you can go to places like Critique Circle is like a place that I did, I learned a bunch of things about my own writing because I didn't have a writer's group, right? Adam has a writer's group where he's a Lucas Award winner and he's the least decorated person in his writer's group. And he's got all these brilliant people, critiquing his stories. And I don't have that. So I would post things on Critique Circle and people would savage them. And then I would learn, what people hated about them. They're pretty rough, but I learned a bunch there. We'd like to take the place of things like that for people where now they can do this on the forums and groups form on the forums and everything. We'll facilitate whatever people want to do, but we'd like to see the forums turn into a place that is a bunch of people helping each other, being positive, doing, and that's how our poker training site was. I still have a bunch of friends who were members of my poker training site because it was such a friendly environment. And if somebody wasn't friendly, we just booted them and tossed them because it's our business. We don't have to be nice to anyone. So if somebody's rude on the forums, we won't say, hey, stop being rude on the forums. We'll just kick them off the site and never let them back. Yeah. And there's no reason to bother with that. And so we can police the forums in a way that makes everybody have a good time while they're there and turn that into a really positive environment where everybody's encouraging each other and helping each other learn how to be successful as a self-published author. I guess the real goal, all this turns into, I want to create so many successful self-published authors that the traditional publishers all go under. That's what I would like to see. I would like to see them all just crumble to the ground.
That's going to be the quote for the front cover of this episode, I think.
It's been a miserable, corrupt business for so long that I'd like to just see them all burn. I was in the music industry for a while, and I know streaming isn't paying people as much money for some of the top bands as they used to make with CD sales, but it's also providing more money for some of the lesser bands, and it's providing cheaper music access to customers. And so, whatever replaces the old system is just got to be better. And how corrupt I saw the music industry business as was worse than the current streaming rates. Yeah. So I see the same thing with self-publishing. However bad Amazon might be, however bad any other company might be, they're going to be better than the fat cat traditional publishers who just would give you nothing for your books.
Yeah.
In fact, that's how we started self-publishing. Was we got an offer from the kind of big poker book publisher at the time that was horrible. Yeah. And we said, we're publishing this ourselves. We just this is an unacceptably bad offer and we're not doing this.
Yeah. That's really interesting. I mean, I'm really forward to seeing where this goes, because I think this, it's quite different to what I was expecting it to be. When I first spoke to you, I wasn't really sure what it was, and then looking through it, I was like, well, this is such a useful guide for people, especially if they're starting out and wanting to get that help, because especially now where there's loads of stuff being pumped out of AI, having that chance to chat to other people in your industry where you can get a bit of critique on your work, I think it's going to be really invaluable. So yeah, I think if people want to get in touch with you about this, where's the best place to go to? Is it just writtenwell.com, or is there another way?
WrittenWell.com. And if you, let's see, stop sharing this. I'll make sure I got this right. And we will create go do it right now. We'll create a discount code for your members. Let's just say it's publishing performance, all small letters, easy to remember.
Yeah, great. We'll put a link to the show for it anyway, so you don't need to remember it. But there you go. Thanks for coming on, Chris. I've been really appreciate your time to come on.
Yeah,
usually we end these calls with just a question. It's usually about a book that you recommend other people should read. So have you got any books that you recommend that people should be reading?
Oh, I have a ton of books I love. What I do is when I'm writing fiction, I have a pile of books that I think are relevant to that particular book. And so I can reference, how did this person handle this? How did this person handle that? So was just working on a project that is a vigilante working in Detroit, killing people, doing crazy things, and how to handle a psychopath and also make them likable. So I have two of Thomas Harris's books, right? I have Dragon and Silence of the Lambs, and I can just look at some of the ways that he handled this and get some inspiration from that. So I have just a pile of books in that bunch. I think everything Thomas Harris written is great, and I love Cormac McCarthy for that kind of stuff too. I reference his stuff as well, and I think reading great fiction is so valuable for me that I have some books, like I have a book called Characters and Viewpoint that I was just reading that's pretty good, and I have some grammar books, things like that. But I think most of the value that I get in writing better from a book is from just reading great fiction. And I think people like McCarthy and Harris are great examples of that.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you very much. This is good recommendations. Well, it's been great chatting, Chris, and we'll speak again soon.
All right, I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Publishing Performance podcast. I really hope you found today's episode inspiring. I love chatting to authors, writers, and people in the publishing world. Now, just before we wrap up, let me tell you about Publishing Performance, the #1 platform for authors who want to increase Amazon book sales, but are not really sure where to start. Now, this show is all about helping you to sell more books. And if you're looking to boost your publishing game and to maximize your book's potential on Amazon, then Publishing Performance is designed to help authors just like you to grow your readership and to reach a much wider audience. Now, I know that Amazon ads can be slightly complicated, which is why Publishing Performance is like having a personalized ad account manager to create your ad campaigns, to choose your best keywords, and to make adjustments in real time. Now, if you're investing in ads, you really want to make sure that your investment is being used effectively, and Publishing Performance does just that. It aims to make your budget go further, improve your organic rank, and target keywords more effectively. Just go to publishingperformance.com to get started with Amazon ads for just $1. Thank you so much for tuning into the Publishing Performance podcast. I really hope you found today's episode inspiring. I love chatting to authors, writers, and people in the publishing world. Now, just before we wrap up, let me tell you about Publishing Performance, the #1 platform for authors who want to increase Amazon book sales, but are not really sure where to start. Now, this show is all about helping you to sell more books. And if you're looking to boost your publishing game and to maximize your book's potential on Amazon, then Publishing Performance is designed to help authors just like you to grow your readership and to reach a much wider audience. Now, I know that Amazon ads can be slightly complicated, which is why Publishing Performance is like having a personalized ad account manager to create your ad campaigns, to choose your best keywords, and to make adjustments in real time. Now, if you're investing in ads, you really want to make sure that your investment is being used effectively, and Publishing Performance does just that. It aims to make your budget go further, improve your organic rank, and target keywords more effectively. Just go to publishingperformance.com to get started with Amazon ads for just $1.